Narcissists lose every tool the moment the other person stops feeling anything at all. The person who faces a narcissist and remains completely flat inside begins to notice the change right away. Ordinary people react with anger or hurt or the need to explain. Those reactions feed the narcissist. The person who feels nothing gives no feed. The brain of the narcissist registers the missing emotion as a sudden cut in supply. That cut creates the first real fear. The fear starts with the loss of impact. Narcissists measure their existence by the emotional marks they leave on others. When no mark appears, the measurement fails. The nervous system that expects a spike of reaction now receives silence instead. Silence registers as social exclusion. Social exclusion travels the same pathways the body uses for physical injury. The result is an urgent physical craving for any response that proves the narcissist still matters. The craving grows stronger the longer the flat response continues. The person who stays emotionally untouchable never answers that craving. Every insult lands on empty ground. Every sudden charm attempt finds no buyer. Every guilt move meets a blank face. The narcissist watches the usual tools produce zero result. Zero result forces the system to confront its own emptiness. Emptiness is the core fear. What the narcissist fears most is the permanent state in which no emotional lever works. That state arrives through deliberate steps that remove every possible reaction. The first step is the refusal to match any emotional tone. When the narcissist raises volume, the other person keeps the same calm level. When the narcissist drops into soft concern, the other person stays at the same calm level. Matching never happens. The brain expects emotional mirroring as proof of connection. When mirroring is denied, the proof vanishes. The vanishing proof creates rising internal pressure. That pressure shows in the next move the narcissist makes. The move is often a test designed to force a crack. A carefully chosen comment about the other person's past failure or private weakness appears. Ordinary instinct is to defend or to feel the old sting again. Both create the emotion the narcissist needs. The untouchable person treats the comment as background noise. No defense, no internal sting. The comment simply ends. The narcissist is left holding a tool that produced nothing. The failure of the tool feeds a deeper fear. Narcissists fear being ordinary more than almost anything else. Ordinary means the special status is gone. Special status requires constant proof from other people's reactions. When reactions stop, special status has no support. The support collapses in real time. The person who stays flat watches the collapse without comment. Comment would restore the old support. Silence keeps the collapse going. The mindset required to reach this state is absolute non-contribution. The person treats every rising emotion as a potential gift of power that must never be delivered. The mind stays fixed on one rule. No feeling that can be used is allowed to leave the body. This rule is not soft. It is a cold calculation of supply denial. The person who adopts it begins to see the narcissist as a system that runs only on extracted reaction. The system is predictable. Predictable systems lose force when the fuel is cut. Emotional intelligence is the tool that makes the rule possible. Emotional intelligence here is not warmth or empathy. It is the capacity to detect the exact moment an extraction attempt begins and to choose non-response before the body translates the signal into words or face change. The person who has this capacity notices the first tightness in the chest or the first heat in the face. The notice happens without judgment. The notice is followed by a deliberate redirect of attention to external facts only. The redirect keeps the emotion from becoming supply. Real-world arguments show the difference in clear steps. In a workplace meeting, a narcissistic coworker mocks a proposed idea in front of the group. The ordinary response is to defend the idea with rising voice, or to explain why the mockery is unfair. Both responses hand over emotional energy. The group watches the exchange, and the narcissist gains status from the visible disturbance. The person with a required mindset does something different. The person continues stating the next fact of the proposal in the same even tone. The face stays neutral. The body stays still. The mockery lands and produces no visible effect. The group notices the lack of impact. The narcissist's status drops because the expected drama never arrives. The drop is permanent for that meeting. The same pattern appears in a family dinner argument. A narcissistic relative brings up an old personal failure and frames it as concern. The ordinary response is to feel the old shame and either apologize or counterattack. Both choices restore the relative's position as the one who controls the emotional climate of the table. The person who stays untouchable answers with a short factual correction and then returns to the previous topic. No apology, no counterattack, no change in tone. The relative escalates. Escalation meets the same flat response. The table begins to treat the relative's words as background noise. Background noise is ordinary. Ordinary status is the fear that drives the next surge. Keeping emotions in order during these moments follows a fixed internal sequence. The sequence begins the instant the body signals threat. The signal is heat, tightness, or the urge to speak faster. The person who has trained the sequence notices the signal and labels it as data rather than command. The label stops the automatic translation into reaction. Attention then moves to one external fact that must still be handled. The fact becomes the only content allowed in speech. The emotion stays inside and is not offered. The offering never happens. This sequence is the practical form of emotional intelligence under pressure. Emotional intelligence allows the person to map the narcissist's next likely move while the body remains calm. Mapping happens without personal investment. The map shows that the narcissist will increase volume or switch to charm when the first tool fails. The map prepares the next non-response before the increase arrives. Preparation removes surprise. Surprise is what turns a signal into an uncontrolled reaction. In a private partner confrontation, the pattern repeats with higher intensity. The narcissistic partner accuses the other of coldness or lack of care after a period of reduced contact. The ordinary response is to explain the reasons or to feel guilt and restore the old level of attention. Both responses restart the supply. The person with the required mindset states the current boundary once in flat language and then stops speaking. The partner escalates to tears or to rage. Tears and rage meet silence. Silence confirms that the emotional door stays shut. The confirmation produces the visible agitation that reveals the dependence. The importance of emotional intelligence becomes clear in the speed of detection. Without it, the body reacts before the mind can intervene. With it, the detection happens early enough to keep the reaction private. Private reaction never becomes public supply. Public supply is what the narcissist requires to maintain the false self. When public supply is denied across repeated arguments, the false self begins to starve in real time. Public settings amplify the effect. In a group project discussion, a narcissistic colleague claims credit for work done by others and then dismisses any correction as insecurity. The ordinary response is to list the actual contributions with rising frustration. Frustration hands the emotional stage back to the colleague. The person who stays untouchable simply restates the documented facts in the same tone used for any other update, and then moves to the next agenda item. The group sees the facts stand without defense. The colleague's claim loses weight because no emotional contest appears. The absence of contest is the power shift. The mindset that supports this behavior treats residual feeling as a liability. Residual feeling is the leftover tension that stays after an interaction. Ordinary people carry residual feeling and replay the argument later. Replay keeps the narcissist inside the mind. The person who defeats the narcissist ends the internal replay the moment the interaction ends. Attention moves to the next external task. The narcissist is left holding the unfinished loop alone. The unfinished loop continues to consume the narcissist's mental resources, while the other person remains free of it. Emotional intelligence makes the ending of residual feeling possible. It allows the person to recognize that any continued internal dialogue is another form of supply given in private. Recognition stops the dialogue. The stop is deliberate and repeated until the body no longer generates the leftover tension. In a neighborhood dispute, a narcissistic neighbor escalates a small boundary issue into personal attack. The ordinary response is to match the personal tone and defend character. Matching restores the emotional exchange the neighbor seeks. The person who stays untouchable answers only the factual boundary once, and then ends the conversation by walking away. The neighbor continues speaking to empty space. Empty space produces no confirmation. The lack of confirmation forces the neighbor to confront the sudden isolation. Isolation is processed as loss. Loss heightens the next attempt. The next attempt meets the same closed response. The sequence of closed responses builds a permanent asymmetry. The narcissist's nervous system remains fixed on the quiet person. The quiet person's nervous system remains fixed on external tasks. The one-sided fixation is the source of lasting power. What the narcissist fears most in the face of repeated closed responses is the complete absence of emotional reach. Reach is how the false self measures continued existence. Without reach, the false self has no evidence that it still holds weight in the other person's system. The fear of weightlessness produces one last surge of either extreme charm or extreme attack. Both are met with the same measured factual response, and then silence. The surge fail. Failure at this stage removes the final illusion that any tool still works. The deeper pattern that emerges is the recognition that every argument is only a request for proof of emotional availability. Proof was once given automatically through reaction. When reaction is permanently withheld, the request has nothing left to answer it. The person who understands the request for what it is never again mistakes the demand for real power. That understanding produces the final internal state. The person moves through required contact with no residual tension. The body stays calm because the nervous system is no longer preparing for impact. Calm is itself a signal. The signal tells the narcissist that no further tool will work. The signal is never explained. Explanation would reopen a channel. Silence keeps every channel closed. The last fear that settles is the fear of permanent irrelevance. Irrelevance is the complete opposite of the special status the system requires. When every emotional pathway has been sealed and stays sealed, irrelevance becomes the new condition. The brain registers permanent irrelevance as a form of social death. Social death produces a lasting contraction that no amount of later charm or rage can fully reverse. The contraction is the end of the old power arrangement. The person who remained emotionally untouchable never forced the outcome. The outcome arrived through the simple ongoing refusal to feel anything the narcissist could use. The refusal is quiet. The refusal is permanent. The refusal leaves the narcissist without a single remaining lever while the other person continues unaffected. The mindset that sustains this state is the continuous treatment of emotion as a controlled resource rather than an automatic response. The resource is never spent where it can be collected. The person who masters the treatment turns every argument into a demonstration of the narcissist's dependence. The demonstration requires no announcement. The demonstration works through the steady absence of any feeling that could be taken. Emotional intelligence remains the operating system that keeps the treatment precise. It detects the extraction attempt at the first signal. It redirects attention before the signal becomes speech. It ends residual feeling the moment contact ends. The precision creates the permanent asymmetry that the narcissist cannot reverse. The asymmetry is the final position. The narcissist continues to operate according to the same fixed needs. Those needs are simply no longer met. The system runs out of fuel in one specific direction and must seek it elsewhere. The person who feels nothing is no longer part of the search. In another common Workplace scenario: the narcissist arrives late to a team update and then criticizes the pace of progress, as if the delay belonged to everyone else. Ordinary people feel the unfairness and begin to list the actual timeline with rising heat in the voice. The heat becomes the emotional mark the narcissist collects. The person who stays untouchable states the documented dates in the same even tone used for any other report, and then asks the next logistical question. The criticism lands on empty ground. The room registers the absence of contest. The absence lowers the critic's standing without a single defensive word. The same cold sequence applies when the narcissist switches to charm after a failed attack. Sudden praise or an offer of help appears. Ordinary instinct is to accept the warmth and feel relief. Relief reopens the supply channel. The untouchable person acknowledges the factual content of the offer, if any exists, and then returns to the original task. No matching warmth, no lingering. The charm attempt produces no emotional return. The lack of return confirms that the earlier attack also failed. Both tools are now proven empty in the same interaction. Keeping the internal sequence intact requires constant monitoring of the body's early signals. Heat in the face is noticed and labeled as data. Tightness in the chest is noticed and labeled as data. The urge to explain is noticed and labeled as data. Each label interrupts the automatic path that would turn the signal into spoken emotion. Attention then locks onto one concrete external fact that still requires handling. The fact becomes the only permitted content. The emotion remains private and therefore unavailable for collection. This monitoring is the practical core of emotional intelligence under pressure. It allows the person to stay one step ahead of the extraction attempt. The narcissist's next move is predicted from the pattern of previous failures. Prediction removes the element of surprise that normally forces a reactive response. Without surprise, the body stays quiet. Heroic. Quiet is the visible proof that no lever remains. In a repeated family setting, the narcissist returns to the same old story of past sacrifice and frames current distance as ingratitude. Ordinary people feel the pull of old loyalty and begin to justify the current boundary. Justification hands over the emotional stage. The person who remains untouchable restates the current factual limit once, and then changes the subject or ends the conversation. The old story is left hanging. The hanging story continues to occupy the narcissist's attention while the other person moves on. The occupation itself becomes another form of cost the narcissist must carry alone. Residual feeling after these exchanges is treated as another form of private supply that must be cut. The moment contact ends, the person redirects full attention to an unrelated external task. The mind is not allowed to replay the words or the tone. Replay would keep the narcissist active inside the system. The redirect ends the activity. Over repeated practice, the body stops generating residual tension because the tension is never rewarded with attention. The cumulative effect of these closed interactions is a visible change in the narcissist's behavior. Volume increases for a period and then drops. Charm attempts become more frequent and then less convincing. Recruitment of third parties begins and then fails when those parties also meet flat responses. Each stage is observed without comment. Observation without comment is the final form of non-contribution. The person who maintains the mindset of absolute non-contribution never needs to announce the strategy. The strategy works through consistent absence of matching emotion, absence of residual replay, absence of explanation. The absences starve the system that requires constant emotional input. The starvation produces the contraction that the narcissist cannot hide. That contraction is the concrete evidence that the fear has taken hold. The fear of permanent irrelevance settles in and remains. The special status the false self requires has no remaining support. The support was always the emotional reaction of others. When that reaction is permanently withheld, the status collapses under its own weight. The person who withheld it continues with the same calm, external focus. The calm is the last signal. The signal requires no words. The signal is enough.